Hey there, Nichole. Welcome to the Making Math Moments That Matter podcast. We are excited to have you here today, and do us a favor. Let us know where you're coming from, and let us know what your teaching role is.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for having me. My name is Nicole. I am a kindergarten teacher in Richmond, Virginia. I've
Awesome.
been teaching for about 7 years, so finding
Awesome.
kindergarten home so far.
Great, great. Yeah, like kindergarten is near and dear to my heart. My wife is a kindergarten early childhood educator. So, we're talking about kindergartners and stories that come home every single day and all the craziness and the excitement and the messiness that happens in kindergarten is something I hear about every single day. Let's jump right in here. Like when we talk about math moments, like when we say, "Hey, what's your math moment? What's a moment that sticks with you from your past that's, you carry forward?" It's when we say like, when you think about math class, things pop in our mind and it defines, I think, what we think about math class or what we had think about math class. So when we say math class, Nicole, what would you say is like has stuck with you all these years as a memorable math moment?
Yeah, well, so as somebody who listens to your podcast, I've thought about this a lot. And looking back, I still go with the elementary lens, and I don't have a lot of memories of math in elementary school. I remember that when I got into third and fourth grade, they separated us between higher level math students and lower math students. So we switched classes a lot. And that was when I first kind of realized that I thought like, oh, I was good at math because I went with the kids who were in the higher class math class. And I remember feeling like I was good at math for a long time, going on into middle school, and then getting into high school, I felt that I was pushed back into the lower math classes again. So math for me has always been a little bit of kind of that you're either good at it or you're not so good at it and you need a lot of extra help. It was never really a feeling of like, no, we can do this. Oh, it's fun. There's different things that are happening. It was just like tracked very often.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Now, I think lots of listeners might feel similarly to that, but when you think about your moment and when you think about what you're doing in classrooms today, like what do you think is like what have you carried forward? Like how does that moment affect what you're doing in the classroom these days?
Yeah, so we've kind of gone through a few different structures in the math class. We've done math workshop a little bit,
Okay.
which then did feel still like some of that, tracking that you had your groups of kids who were maybe a little bit lower, your groups of kids who were kind of really understanding it. And I try as much as possible to steer clear of that if we can and allow them
Right.
to kind of spend more time together in just groups that maybe this group is all Spanish speaking kids. And so they're kind of playing with a dual language approach to math more so. Or maybe this group is just, kids, they just all sit around the same table together all the time and they want to do it together. So something that I've been looking at is going less into kind of math groups and more into kind of we can all explore math together no matter what level
Right.
you're on or no matter how high you can count right now.
Right. Right. What do you like when you think about kindergartners and say those groupings? Like what are you seeing as, you know, uh what you're really striving like what are you really striving for in your classroom right now? So when you think about kindergarten learning and learning mathematics, like if you're you're cognizant of grouping, you're cognizant of tracking, you're kind of thinking I know that this is an issue for me in my past, but also I know that this is something important for students and trying to manage a kindergartner classroom. Like imagine like I'm trying to get a sense of what is it that you want your class to look like and what are you striving for in your class currently?
So I think I want my class, like I said, to feel a little bit more like we're all just engaging in math together, whether that's through more hands-on things, and that no matter what ability you are, you can still add to the conversation, that you don't feel like you are left out, that in some way you still feel like you can answer the question or answer or like put your input into the problem. And it'll still be valid. You'll still have something to give to the group. So yeah, a little bit more hands-on and a little bit less feeling, a little bit more of them exploring math and less me teaching math at them to some
Gotcha.
extent.
Yeah. Gotcha. So what what's a pebble that's rattling around your shoe right now? Like we want to explore that with you. We want to kind of like dig in, like what's going on, that we can kind of nail down here today so that you can feel, more successful about achieving the vision that you want in your math class.
Yeah, so kind of off of that same point, something that we've been having a hard time with every so often has been the idea of math talk or math chats with kindergartners, especially because our curriculum is so thin to some extent that we really focus mostly on numeracy skills, learning how to count, learning how to count objects, that there's not a whole bunch for them to talk about in an exciting way sometimes,
Right.
or at least we haven't found an exciting way for them to discuss those things. So we're kind of trying to figure out, how we can get them to engage in math conversations with each other when all we're really asking them to talk about is numbers and number concepts.
Gotcha. And what are you seeing right now? Like and what are you doing right now to try to engage those students? Like so paint us a picture, like what does classroom look like now, knowing that you want more engagement in math talk, knowing that we're talking about counting in number sense, in number sense, but like paint us a picture of what you've tried.
Yeah, so some of the things that we've done have been like when we talk about more and less, we'll bring out some of our manipulatives and talk about, like if we were to create a pet store and our pet store, there had to be one more animal in each section of the pet store. So if we start off with one cat, then how many dogs are there going to be? And then how many lizards are there going to be? And so they can kind of build it with the manipulatives and kind of create this little environment that each section has one more, and they have to be the ones who figure out, how we move through the pet store in that way. We've also done kind of later on in the year when we talk more about addition concepts, we've done like again, with those manipulatives, we've done a kind of an aquarium visit, quote unquote, that, we'll have different fish tanks have different types of sea animals in them and how many are in each thing. So we're trying to make it something that they can kind of visualize and work through with a partner and kind of talk with a little bit more. But as I said, kind of especially in the beginning of the year, it's a little bit less exciting to them. It's a little bit more of just we're going through 1 through 10 for quite some time.
Right. And like it sounds like you're you're trying different things to get at this classroom that you're looking at. But what makes you feel like it's not doing the thing you want it to do?
I think it's just inconsistency is the biggest piece. That, we'll have kind of these ideas every so often that we are excited about and that we can kind of bring into our classroom and we feel good about them. And then they're not there the next week, that we don't feel that way about every single learning target or every single topic, that some of them feel a little bit easier to handle and manage, some of them don't. And sometimes I will say that the problem seems to be a little bit more that, with such a wide variety of learners, sometimes the higher learners are able to do this a little bit more easily, and the lower learners just get really lost. So kind of figuring out where the balance is between this is something that they can do, that everybody can do, and like that this is exciting, that they're engaged in it, that they're not feeling left out.
Got it. Got it. Now, Yvette, what do you think about, what Nicole's kind of experiencing and what she's been trying?
I'm having an actual debate with myself right now because I can totally. So I want to preface this by saying that I do not teach kindergarten, and I have not taught kindergarten, although I've of course spent time in kindergarten classes. But my first question I'm asking myself is, what is the goal of a math talk in kindergarten? Is it to your point, right? We're working on really foundational concepts and skills. It's
Mhm.
not super complex, especially in number sense. So where I was kind of debating this whole time is the goal to kind of get in and get out and to establish a routine where they're building that number sense? And is that the time to build in our talk routines? And I guess I'm not sure. Like you said, I don't know that there's that much to talk about or debate or think about or question. And unless we're building in maybe, some estimation or curiosity. So I guess my question to you, and that was really long-winded, is what do you hope to get out of that math talk time? Is the purpose to
Mm.
support your culture of learning, or is that time really just a routine to solidify those foundational skills for them, and then we can jump into the more curious tasks?
Um, I think that there's kind of a balance for me that yes, we definitely have more of those like kind of routine moments. We don't have a set curriculum in my district. We have kind of a scope and sequence, but we can create the lessons kind of how we need them to be. And through our scope and sequence, we have ideas for math talks, but those ideas are really just, show them dot patterns 1 through 3,
Right.
show them dot patterns 1 through 4, show them dot patterns 1 through 5. And that can be, like I said, yes, there is that routine, but that can be very, very boring to some extent that, every single day we're going, here's a picture, that's 3. Here's a picture, that's 2. And it is slow building throughout the year. Like I said, by the end of the year, we get to 10. And so that's 180 days until we get to see all of those things. That's a long time. So I think we're trying to figure out how we can balance a little bit that those routine skills that we are just kind of getting in and out and practicing. I can identify this quantity with making it a little bit more intriguing so we're not feeling as kind of disengaged right from the jump in math class.
Now, I'm I'm also thinking about this because I think intentionality, like Yvette, your idea, like your thought about intentionality is so important in the things that we do, in the things that we're trying, and like there's routines that come up, and it's like, okay, there's that's great routine, great routine, this idea, and it's like thinking about, we get caught up sometimes. I think, and I used to get caught up like that in going, I want that. I want to make sure it's flashy. I want to make sure that kids are like coming out here and going home and telling their parents about it, in talking about math class and talking about the things that we're doing. And there's that duality that we want engagement. And does engagement always mean deeper learning? Right? Like is
Mhm.
because I think sometimes we're like, we want this engagement, because I spent a long time trying to focus on engagement to get kids hooked into my lessons, and trying to kind of like not make sure it's boring. And I taught high school students, so like they get bored real easy and real fast. And whereas your students are probably like itching to do something and ready, and they're all excited to kind of do whatever you ask them to do. And and I would focus on engagement primarily, and then lose focus about how to make sure students understood and made sense of the work that they're doing. So when you're thinking about, using a particular routine, is it what in and I think asking that question that Yvette said is like, what is the purpose of this lesson, this routine, this these 10 minutes on the carpet? Like, what is it that we're hoping to achieve here? And maybe it is, hitting a standard, or cover, or looking at a standard, or unpacking a standard. Maybe it is a strategy or a relationship, or maybe it is, trying to come up with, or show students, the symbol that represents 3, but also the quantity that represents 3, and then connecting those two things together, because those are different things than,
Mhm.
recognizing a symbol, quantity, understanding the quantity, then realizing there's a symbol that matches it, is an essential kind of uh, a relationship that kindergartners do need to know, and we want that that happen. But it's like, is the intentionality here about the quantity, or is the intentionality about the symbol? Is the intentionality about linking the two? So partly it's like, what is that intentionality? And then ask the question about what's the engagement to get to that? And will I be able to achieve the outcome that we're really after
Mm-hmm.
by doing this activity? And sometimes you're like, okay, maybe not. Maybe I need to rethink what structure I'm trying to use here. Should I do more one-on-one, one on small group, big group, carpet lessons in kindergarten, which I know is probably not the ideal because it's kindergarten and you have like literally 5 minutes when we're all on the carpet together. But that's my thoughts. Yvette, what do you think about like sticking to the intentionality? Anything to add there?
I was writing myself some notes here about, what does a math talk look like in a kindergarten classroom in
Right.
kind of that ideal scenario? Like what would I hope to gain from that time? And the first thing I wrote down is, I just want to focus on those foundational skills. So I want to really make sure that we're all having an opportunity to engage in a routine, like you mentioned, that's scaffolded, that's building on the previous skill. I also envision this space, right, where you do have routines and students have voice. So rather than it being that single student with their hand up who answers, maybe it's choral response or it's whisper response or it's, pair share, square share. Like it's like everybody is answering. Because one thing I notice in even grade 6 and 7 classes is that sometimes when there's one person responding, Lucy West famously says it's sleepy time for everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So when there's that one student explaining their answer and it's a lengthy response, you sometimes lose everybody else in the room. So how can it be engaging for everybody where maybe we're all saying it at the same time, the answer, and then I hear my neighbor say something different and I turn to them and ask them about it. So just making sure that it's not that teacher, student throughout the routine. It's really everybody is answering all of the time. And then I also wrote brief. Like, and I kind of alluded it to that before, like, let's get in and get out. If we're really intentional with the purpose of that math talk, maybe it doesn't need to be more than 5 or 10 minutes. If my intention and goal for that time is super clear and everybody is engaged at all times throughout that 5 minutes, maybe that's sufficient. And my question to you, Nichole, is when do you see them super engaged and excited about math learning? So if it's not necessarily during math talk, when else do you see it happening during your math block?
So I will say, like exactly what you said, right? It feels a lot, that math talk portion feels a lot like teacher shows, student respond, like one student responds. So it doesn't feel like a math talk. It feels more like, just a quick question and answer period a lot of the time. Which is, I think, pieces of my like struggle with engagement that you're right, like they don't all seem engaged for the most part. Like 3 of them are engaged. And it's very easy for the rest of them to kind of just check out really quickly. As far as when do we see them engaged, I do think that depends a little bit on the topic that we're talking about. Anything that allows them to be more hands-on, they're into. Anytime they can touch anything. It doesn't have to be anything specific, but anytime they can touch something, and a lot of times, honestly, time they can touch something that in a meaningful way, that they feel like has a story or that they're working towards something, that they feel really engaged and kind of excited about that part because they're building something, even if they don't fully understand why they're doing it or what the purpose is at the moment. They feel really good about that part. So I think, again, that's kind of why in my head, I'm like, they need to be, yes, I want it to feel routine and I want it to be something that they are kind of quick with, but I don't want it to be 3 kids that are kind of getting this quick quote unquote talk. I want them to feel like they can talk to each other a little bit more, even if they, like I said, I have Spanish speakers in my classroom. I have students who have special needs. And so finding that common language between them through math talks can be a little bit challenging at times.
Mm-hmm.
That it feeling sometimes like it's, your high flyer children who are ready to answer it. They're ready to be in and be out and move on to the next piece that they want to do. So finding time that they can kind of talk to each other and feel more settled in what they know.
What do you see as your next move? Like, what do you see as a change that you're going to make after, this very quick discussion about this?
I do think that it would be good to kind of explore a little bit more into like math partners, maybe like you had said math, like a pair share kind of a thing, but something that they maybe have like the same person for the whole week, that they feel a little bit more comfortable talking to that person, or they get used to talking to that person. Because it's hard in the beginning of the year, especially that they don't know everybody, they don't feel comfortable. So maybe having more of an opportunity where like they each partner group maybe gets something to look at and they talk to each other about it more than like a whole big thing that we're looking at the board on the carpet. More so that even if it is just one picture of 3 cars or one picture of 4 apples, that they can kind of talk about to each other about what they see or what they notice, more so than just like a whole class time.
Do you see working, like you said, they're most engaged when they're holding something, they're manipulating something, and they got hands on. Do you see a way to integrate your math talk, what you want to do more, math talks, but knowing that we need more talking individually. So now you've kind of got, okay, we're gonna change this component of my math talk to have them talk individually to the same student or sit beside the same student every, during the week, and then swap that, because that's great for building that culture of the room. And that, so that eventually they all talk to each other, but also knowing that they're most engaged in, holding something. Do you see a way to blend that into your math talk, like in say the prompt that you're putting on the screen, or you're talking about or holding up? Do you see a way to kind of, hey, I'm gonna also bring in this his handhold or this manipulative idea with it?
Possibly. I think that it's something that we could do, that instead of, giving each group maybe a picture or something to look at, instead you're kind of giving them a bucket that has, a set amount inside of it that they can kind of maneuver and kind of look at, pick up a little bit more
Sure.
themselves. Or even build yourself. Because like you said, sometimes you're looking at the numeral, sometimes you're looking at, more of the quantity instead. So kind of giving them an opportunity to play with both maybe. And
Sure.
so I think it's a possibility.
What's holding you back when you say like it's a possibility? Because it's the most engaging, but then it's
I
like,
do.
it's a possibility, which means you're like, I don't know if that's going to work for me.
I think more so just the, management piece and the constant like keeping up sometimes with all of that.
Yeah.
When you're doing it for everything all the time, it's easy to fall back on pictures, and or visuals rather than, hands-on and setting that
Right.
up, because it's time consuming to
It is.
set all of
It
that
is
up.
definitely.
But
It's definitely time consuming. And I used to think about there was a ratio that I always kind of lumped this kind of, and there's no like set rule for me, but I always thought that too, is like, okay, there is a setup time, a learning time for me to, structure this so that students will get the maximum amount of learning out of this routine or this lesson. And it's like, okay, do I want to do all of this to get this? And what payout, what, you know, what kind of benefit do we get if I do all of this work? Is it going to be a huge benefit for the students or a little benefit? Because it's like, oh, like I only have so much time in a day to balance. And maybe I want to spend that chunk of time doing another activity because that's the huge benefit today. Because you've got, you're not just teaching math. So,
mhm.
like thinking about that ratio is really, really important to do. And then what it means though is it falls back on intentionality. Like, what is it that we really want to get out of this? And is it worth it to do that amount of prep to get that output? And it doesn't have to be the same for every day, if you know what I mean. Like, some days you
Yeah.
might be like focusing here and some days you focus here, but you put a lot of, prep work into that activity because this is such an important concept for students to get, and they have to, do that. And then if you make it part of a routine, then the classroom management usually becomes easier once that routine is established. But that's what I tend to think about when I go, hey, I'm something, this is holding me back, which is the amount of class management or prep work that I have to put into place. It's like, what is that trade-off?
Yeah, it makes me feel better too that you said like it doesn't have to be the same every day. That the intention could be a little bit more towards one thing one day, and then that's not really the biggest piece the next day. Because you don't want things to kind of go by the wayside. And for us, numeracy is super important all the time because, if you have somebody who you say, show me three, and they still don't know what three is, then that is a big issue. And it'll continue to be a big issue. So those pieces need to be a little bit more intentional for
Mm-hmm.
us and a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more focused on. Um, so I think like feeling that it's not, the intention doesn't always have to be in that same space every day, but that it can be there from time to time. That does help. That it doesn't need to be an everyday thing, but it can be, you know, still an occasional thing that they get used to.
So with that in mind, when you think about this conversation we've had today, what would you say your biggest takeaway is?
I think my biggest takeaway would be, that going into the school year, because Monday we start back up with everything, that really looking at what we are hoping to get from them that day, what we're hoping that they learn, and kind of even just focusing on like how much time do we want to dedicate to them understanding this concept? How much time do we want to dedicate to them, being able to kind of work hands-on or talk to somebody about it, and building those structures early on in the year so that it does become natural as we move through the whole school year.
I think that's a great idea to think about that intentionality, think about what is it that we're trying to do, and I think pairing that with really experimenting with what has been working with a group, because what works with one group is not going to work with another, and what works with one student is not going to work with another. And you know that from working with young children, young minds, and really I think listening to how they respond to those structures, those engagements, those interactions that you're trying to create, and listening for that learning response, but also listening for the outcome, like the intentionality you're trying to help them achieve. If it is that the symbol or the quantity or the relationship between the two, do they have it, do they not, like, and ready to move on and go, like, it's okay that I don't hear from this student because I've checked off that they get that, like they got all year to get up to 10, and it's like that student and that student already got that, right? And it's like what's that next thing that I can push those students on, but then make sure that I'm hearing in trying to get the assessment that I need from these students in this activity or in this structure or in this particular day. So I think that might be a great pairing to say move forward with to start this school year. Nichole, we want to thank you for joining us here today, and we wish you all the best. Would you be open to rejoining us maybe in May-ish, getting closer to the end of the year, and kind of letting us know how things are going?
I would definitely be open to coming back, and I thank you so much for having me. It's been helpful as we kind of enter into a new year to talk through some things that have been weighing on you over the summer.
Right. Totally. You got it's like that stewing time, it's like, oh, I got, it's all coming closer and coming closer. And it's like, oh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? It's like, we totally get that. We appreciate that, but we appreciate you for joining us here, and wish you all the best coming in the new school year.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Nichole.
All right. Bye-bye.